Hey guys, it is Dan Meister, and welcome to a new slash old thing, if that makes any sense. Um, this is
Let's go
going,
with let's go with we're bringing back an old thing.
yeah, but it's a new-ish version of it.
The reboots.
Yeah, rehash, hashtag 2020. No, screw 2020.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Yeah. So this,
Let's talk about a game from '96 for the next like hour and a half.
yeah. So
Nothing about 2020.
so this is that going to be the new. I'm going to call this like Series Two. That's pretty much the title of it. Series 2 of the podcast. And what I'm going to do is make it semi-regular. And I'm going to sort of make it as interesting and as interactive as, as I possibly can. Basically. And so what I'm going to do is, and we're going to have sort of guests on. I mean, who does a solo podcast? Am I right? But like, I'm going to have guests on and I'm going to sort of do game discussions, debates, questions, opinions, that old good old stuff, pretty much. And I'm going to make it, like I said, I wanted it to be interactive, so I want to see comments, and I want to see feedback, and I like to get people involved. So yeah, this is pretty much going to be like one of those things. First of all, I will introduce my co-host because I'm going to have Random Game Critic with me. He's going to be sort of, we're going to be sort of doing these podcasts together. So
Yeah.
it'd be nice to have like a regular, what do you call it? Yeah, a regular co-host, or like, it's like someone who will be with me the whole time. It's just us two today, but we'll definitely have other people joining us. But anyway, yeah, speak, Kyle. You can
Yeah.
introduce yourself and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm here. Yep. Um. Not sure. I think most people who would like follow you probably at least know who I am because I've done a ton of stuff with you. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just me. It's me again.
I'm back again.
And yeah, I'm here because I have nothing else to do, and other people are busy because things are just kind of crazy all around, schedules and whatnots.
Yeah.
Fun times, you know. This will be a fun little time capsule to look back into. Like, oh yeah, yeah, like you remember 2020? Yeah, those were the days.
Those were the days where we couldn't go out and we had bigots in charge. Bigots and idiots in charge of our countries.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I guess. Yeah, we're just let's the topic at hand, please.
yeah. So, anyway, as you'll see from the title, um, this is going to
And
be a podcast about Donkey Kong 64. Now, I've been wanting. The reason I want to start with this podcast is so I'll do a bit of history, background stuff, which has only been for the last couple of weeks, but I guess I'll do a bit of a background, backdrop sort of thing, and I'll explain why I want to do this. So, obviously, so for the last couple of months on my channel, I've been quite inactive because I've been sort of prioritizing real life stuff. For the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about, getting back to doing YouTube stuff, or at least wanted to do something on YouTube. Um, and I was thinking about doing a sort of like a video, like a review sort of video. And Donkey Kong 64 was just the game that came to mind because I was watching a Let's Play of it, as well as been seeing it um, around my YouTube like recommended, and I was there thinking about doing a review of a video of Donkey Kong 64. So, and then I ended up thinking, well, that coincided with looking at the podcast stuff and thinking, I could actually rejuvenate the podcast, like sort of resuscitate it, bring it back to life, and it's sort of one thing led to another, and I sort of combined the two. So now I'm going to do a podcast, which is I want to make semi-regular, like I've said, but I'm going to do it on my first episode is going to be based on Donkey Kong 64. So that's
yeah,
pretty much how that's happening.
yeah, I think the games that are the most fun to talk about are the ones that are like really really big, like revolutionary but flawed, and like why like where it can be improved.
Yeah,
'Cause if it's perfect, you can just say, "Oh, it's a great game," and then call it a day. But here, it's like, nah, weird thing about this game is that like I swear like out of all the classic Rareware N64 games, this was like the one where like public opinion seems to have kind of turned on it. Like I've seen videos again. Like I think we've both seen that one that's literally called Donkey Kong 64 Bad Game Design.
Yes.
I didn't see the Banjo-Kazooie games get that treatment or the Diddy Kong Racing game or anything else that Rareware made at the time. So it's kind of odd. Like it's like almost like the general consensus that this game didn't age all that well.
No, it's really weird, but I sort of get it. So it's funny you mention that because that's a video I was going to touch upon at some point. So we might as well talk about it now.
Okay.
So, Snowman Gaming, who is a really good YouTuber, I have seen a lot of his stuff, is both his good game designs and his bad game designs. And it sort of ties in with this. He's a big Donkey Kong fan. I mean, I'm a big Donkey Kong fan. I love a good amount of Donkey Kong games. Yeah, so Snowman made a video called Bad Game Design, Donkey Kong 64. And it was the first in his series of bad game designs because he'd done a lot of good game designs. And a lot of his points of DK64 are very hard to disagree with, in a sense. So I think that the main point he touched upon was the tag barrels, the fact that it was essentially the game was almost 5 separate adventures in one game, as well as the sort of normal janky camera stuff. The
Yeah.
fact that there were missions which were quite tedious in the sense that I think he showed a couple of examples where it was like, oh, here's Gloomy Galleon. At the very start, you have like a couple of bananas for like Lanky. Then there was a pineapple switch to the side. And then you go forward and there's tiny bananas. And then to the left there's a coconut switch and there's a peanut switch. So you have to pretty much use all 5 Kongs on the very start out of the level of the game for the sake of pretty much 5 bananas and accessing areas. And I guess when you're young, you don't sort of have that analytical approach to games because I've always loved Donkey Kong 64. And I guess that's why us two are here because it was sort of, and I guess the reason, by the way, podcast will go over tangents as we do. So this is my little tangent here. The reason I wanted Kyle, or before I said let's be co-hosts, the reason I actually added him on Discord and said I want to have you in this definitely because I'm someone who's played Donkey Kong 64 since I was 5. I was 999 when it came out, so I'd have been like 4, 5 when I was about 5 when I first played it, and I've completed it countless times. I've started it, restarted it countless times. I've basically had and I've got that nostalgic bias, if you will, to the game because I've played it so many times.
Yeah,
Whereas,
that's why I'm here because
oh,
I'm the guy who has no ties to it, and like I was effectively forced by 2 different people to play it, and then even then I didn't finish it.
so you first played the game when you were how old? 24, 23?
um, Hang on, let me find the date of my first video because that was when I first played the game.
Exactly. So Kyle's played the game, but hasn't actually completed it all the way. But he's played through a decent chunk of it. He got about halfway through, um, and he doesn't have the connection to it necessarily, like the nostalgic bias. He's pretty much can sort of look at it from a very subjective point of view.
Played it 2 years ago, so 25, no 24.
Yeah, 24. Um,
It was January 2018. So
well,
yeah, it was.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess subjective. I mean, it's a bit of both, really. I guess you can have an objective. You can have an objective viewpoint on it, but I guess you can sort of review it with in the sense that, oh, I can look at that, and I think, oh, this is, hmm,
yeah.
yeah,
That looks like that the farthest I got was that giant like sea urchin boss fight,
oh
that
yeah.
giant puffer fish.
Well, actually, you did go through Fungi Forest. We just
Yes,
that was
that's right.
I remember that. That was 3 hours of recording that we lost.
That was what prompted me to cancel the whole thing was the fact that like, yeah, um, I beat that boss. Then we went through half or like all of the next area, and then just none of it saved because my Elgato was a piece of shit. So That was when I bought a new one and canceled the series.
This is why DK64 sucks. It doesn't have an autosave feature.
Well, the other reason why it was canceled, if I can go on a tangent, I only started that game because I got a friend. Okay, it started with me getting a friend of mine to play the Crash Insane trilogy because I'm like, hey, this is a game that I loved when I was a kid. You try out this new version, and he played it, and it's really really hard. So he was just suffering. He was getting really mad, but he kept on playing it, and I'm like, no, you can stop. He's like, no, I'm gonna finish this, but when I do, you gotta play through one of my old childhood games in retaliation. I'm like, oh yeah, what game is that? He said DK64. So that should tell you that it's a game that everyone fondly remembers, but yet it's like one that everyone kind of agrees that it's not like the best. It could be better because that was his mentality. Was I played that game as a punishment for me making him play this really hard game that I loved when I was a kid. Although I think that like depending on who you ask, actually I'm not sure if I can say because in terms of which game is more annoying to complete. Like DK64 is a very tedious game with a lot of things to do. Crash Bandicoot: The Insane Trilogy. If you want to get the relics, you'll be like fucking pulling your hair out from how just absolutely just rage-inducing that shit is. So not sure which is worse. Not sure who got the better deal, but that's the story of why I started the game. Oh, and then then he just stopped playing the Crash Insane Trilogy. And then after that recording failed, I said, okay, I'm gonna stop playing this then because I have no more reason to.
Yeah,
So that's my
and
story.
yeah, and then and then that recording failed, and that was like, well, there you go.
Yep.
But
That was the final straw.
yeah, which is a shame. But so yeah, that's pretty much our backgrounds, our histories for the game. And I go back to like Snowman's video, and it was sort of like, yeah, that was sort of the main point was how it is almost five separate adventures in one game. How there's so many levels where you've got to needlessly switch out when it would seem a bit, it does seem a bit redundant and very repetitive. And it's like I totally get that. You know, I watched the video expecting to hate it, and and when I got to the end of it, you sort of like he makes valid points, and it's not like
Hmm.
I don't think he hates the game because he was another one that he said he had a nostalgic he played the game as a child, so it's not like he was unbiased. He in a way it's not like he was biased. He was very unbiased because he could look at it from a very fresh, open-minded perspective. Um, and in a way, that's a very refreshing thing to do because there are many people, especially when it comes to games they've played as a child, that have those nostalgic rose-tinted glasses on that
Yeah.
really can't see the bad for the love nor money, pretty much. And I admire that in a way.
Yeah, it is hard to do that. Like I sorry, random tangent. I'm doing videos on this cartoon that doesn't even have an episode yet, but there's fans that just will defend every single tiny detail about it. So yeah, it's hard. It is hard to take off the fandom goggles, but yeah, that's well. His point about it being five separate games, though, I remember. Actually, my favorite opinion piece on that was when Donkey talked about the game for like 20 seconds, and it was in his video on game remasters, and he said one of his dream remasters is Donkey Kong 64 because he said that it's a game that had great ideas, could use some improvement, but overall not bad. But he said he would love it if there was a version of the game where you could swap Kongs with a D-pad
Yes.
instead of walking over to a barrel. And I'm just like, yeah, that would like change the whole game. Even if that wasn't the case, though, I think that where DK64 really crossed the line was different bananas for each Kong.
Yeah.
If each one had their own switches to hit, each one had their own golden bananas, like okay, fine, that's a bit much, but fine. I think they crossed the line when they dropped 500 bananas in each level, and each one required a different Kong to pick up.
I know. And it's like, so I think why they did that, which is, so I think we're probably done with Snowman's video. We can probably come back to it. But then I think the reason they did that, and this is where I really want to go into not the history, but it's like DK64, I think, was sort of an amalgamation of Donkey Kong game, which is obviously, but it'll make sense as I go through, and what Rareware it seemed were trying to achieve with their 3D games, which was to make it this big overworld exploration, and ultimately, as DK64 is renowned for, collectables. And that's, I think, what you got. And it was almost like a mishmash in the end. And it was almost... I don't know exactly what it was. When I'm trying to think of it of a well-rounded thing, I feel like I try to be too much to the point where it almost became like a discombobulation, for lack of a better word. But in a way, it's sort of a good word.
Freaking Frankenstein's monster of a video game.
It's sort of, that's a good word. But like, I think discombobulation is a good word to define the chaos that is DK64. And I'm not knocking it. I do enjoy DK64 a lot, and I'll have that.
We should start with a disclaimer that, by the way, no matter what we say, we don't hate this game.
No, well, I love the game. It's almost like probably my top 5 games of all time, just because of how much I've played it. But it's the funniest thing is, and I've spoken to you before, we've said DK64, Banjo-Kazooie. And I've answered to you, DK64, but I think Banjo-Kazooie is a better game.
Right.
And that's nostalgia for you, nostalgic bias.
Yeah, where it's like, hey, it's like, hey, I do love this game, but if you told me that this game is objectively worse, I can't argue with that. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think I think is a sensible opinion from me in a way. I prefer DK64 whilst acknowledging that Banjo-Kazooie is a better game for what it brought to the table, for the pioneering game that it was. It was I think, and I don't know if I'm wrong in this. This can definitely be challenged. But from what I remember having an old Nintendo Power magazines, and I always remember Banjo-Kazooie being the second highest rated game on the console behind Ocarina of Time. Because I'm sure
really?
It's like Ocarina of Time's like 98%. Like again, and this is a very vague memory from like when I was a child, but I remember having the Nintendo Power magazines, and I had seen these percentages, and like they had these gold medals next to them or something, which sort of indicated that it was, Nintendo's prime, like brilliant games, on the console. And Ocarina of Time had like a 98% rating, and Banjo-Kazooie had 95% or 96%, and it was second only to Ocarina of Time, and that's saying something considering how. How popular
Mario 64.
Mario 64 is like 80-something%.
Mario Kart, that does say something.
Mario Kart 64 is only like 70%. I think Mario Kart 64 was a good game, but Mario Kart 64 was very simplistic, I think, and had a lot of flaws, like the rubber banding and all that stuff. That many people liked it because it was 3D, but it was very easy and very simplistic. The challenge wasn't there compared to Super Mario Kart.
Well, I mean, like, name any racing game that's been forever remembered as one of the greatest games ever made. The scores won't reflect that. The scores will just be like, 8 out of 10, fun kart racing game, and that's about it.
But like, I feel like Mario Kart 64 is a lot of people's favorites, and yet like it's quite not panned, definitely not panned, but it's I think there are. It's a lot of people's favourite Mario Karts, but a lot of people prefer other Mario Karts in terms of gameplay and challenges. I don't know, maybe a bit of a tangent. We might discuss that in another podcast.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, if you want to go like just super far off topic and just let this go where it goes, we can talk about that, or we can get back to Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah, so
I'm down with either one.
That's again, guys. That's what our podcast will be.
Pretty much, yeah.
But like a DK64. So yeah, to go back to what I was talking about. Good thing I've got a decent memory to sort of recall where I was at.
What's like shit? What was I saying?
Hang on, what was that? Yeah. Oh right, so I was talking about. Okay.
Wait, you're not a boo? Not paying attention.
Boo. I was saying boo earns. But anyway,
anyways, you were saying
DK64. Hey, what's that all about, eh? No. I love when people do that when they're like, Like that's their way of just going back to something. Hey, what's that all about, eh? Or so we were talking about DK64 anyway. So like, um, what were we talking about? No, so yeah, so so DK64 the history. There were two things that Nintendo, I think, that Rare were trying to accomplish: making it Donkey Kong game. It had the Donkey Kong franchise, but they were
Yeah.
trying to make it what they were doing. They were trying to make it similar and even improve what they were doing in the 3D genre. And I think it became too we got on discombobulated. That's why we went off on a tangent. It was just a chaotic game.
I think, well, I'm gonna throw in a new take here. This is complete speculation, but I could argue that perhaps there was even like some pressure on them, either within the team itself or even from Nintendo themselves. There might have been like some little pressure to make this simply the biggest game they've ever made, because it came packaged in with like that extra like memory card thing for the N64, or what the hell
Oh,
was that?
we'll get onto that as well. The expansion pack.
Yeah, that was something that came with the game. So like there might have been an incentive to make this game just bigger, and that's what made it so bloated.
Well, I'll get onto the expansion pack because I know for a fact that definitely wasn't Nintendo's doing. Or that
Oh,
wasn't.
really?
That wasn't. They didn't want that. No. Um. But so like I want to explore the history of the game, and I'm gonna
Okay.
go back to the Super Nintendo and Donkey Kong Country. So let's talk about DKC 1, DKC 2, and DKC 3. What are your opinions on those games? First of all, do you think they're better than DK64?
I think that's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, but yeah, I definitely would replay those games over DK64, certainly.
Yeah, I'm only asking that question. I mean, it is apples to oranges in a sense, and that's, I think, another problem, because it shouldn't be, because DK64, chronologically, is the next game after Donkey Kong Country 3. So I think that's the
Um,
problem. You've
I
got...
would disagree with that because I think that generally speaking, when platformers jumped from 2D to 3D, look at all of them. Every single one of them just changed drastically. Even like Mario went from being simple, just go from one stage to the next, to Mario 64. It was like a completely different game.
But
It
what
was
I'm...
like how many N64 games do you know where it's like just individual stages? Just go through here, get to the end, and you're done.
Um, Yoshi Story. There aren't
Okay.
many. Yeah, Yoshi Story is probably one.
I guess Glover
Glover.
maybe.
I was literally about to say Glover. Um, but yeah, there aren't many. Yeah, I know, I get your point. But what I'm saying is, as well, if you think about Mario, like chronologically, Super Mario World, and I guess maybe Super Mario 2, Yoshi's Island, I don't know. But if you think about mainstream Mario games, I'd think like Mario World. I don't know if Mario Land was before or after. But then the following game is the preceding game, not preceding game. The successor is Mario 64. So chronologically, Mario 64 is after like a Mario World. And what I'm saying is Donkey Kong 64 chronologically is the next Donkey Kong game in the series after DKC 3. So you've got to think that you have to compare them in some way because it's part of that franchise. So that's what I'm getting at.
Is it like a
But
direct sequel? Like, is there references to the third game in 64?
what Donkey Kong
Or is there
64?
is there references to the older Donkey Kong Country games in 64?
Yeah, well, when you have Wrinkly Kong and you go to her doors outside the lobbies, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I remember that vaguely.
So Wrinkly Kong gives you a hint in each for Acorn and Banana in a level. But the first time you visit Wrinkly Kong, she comes out and says, my body has passed away since DKC 3, but I'm still able to help you." And
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
like there is still the odd reference to DKC 3, um, and I guess a DK series. Obviously, it's a Donkey Kong game, so there have to be references. The characters are still there, like Donkey Kong, Diddy, Cranky, Funky, Candy. Candy's back from DKC 1.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, Wrinkly is back in somewhere. Obviously, they introduced three new characters, which is a separate thing, I guess.
I
But
guess Rare's always been like that though, because when they were tasked to make a freaking Star Fox game, they turned into a Zelda thing. Although that was a completely different story though, different circumstances entirely. But it seems to be a thing though, where it's like, hey, we have this game, and then let's just slap a Nintendo thing onto there.
yeah, exactly. like the thing is, DKC 1, 2, and 3 were such successful games, and I think there's a couple of things that made them successful. First of all, just the enjoyable gameplay. Like all three of those games have good replay value. I think
For sure.
they are games that you can play over and over again. The levels are fun. They're good little side-scrolling quests. And they sort of incorporated, I think, what Rare's specialty is, which is incredible, mind-blowing, ahead of the time graphics. And
Yeah.
DKC 1, 2, and 3, I think, are. I think only possibly, and again, I don't know if this is bias either, but I think only possibly, and I think DKC 1, 2, and 3 are slightly better, but probably only. You could only put Yoshi's Island
I know you're gonna say that.
alongside that in terms of graphics. But then again, all four of those games were towards the end of the SNES's life cycle, so it's probably understandable. But like in terms of the background graphics, DKC I think definitely is miles better. Well, it's better than Yoshi's Island, DKC 1, 2, and 3. But those four games I think were brilliant, were ahead of their time for graphics, and I think that was almost an indication that these graphics are great, but imagine how they would look in 3D. Because like Yoshi's Island sort of had 2.5D aspects, didn't it, with some of the moving platforms and the fire
Oh yeah.
bars that sort of came in and out of the background. And whilst DKC 1 had foreground and background covering it, and some of the backgrounds in DKC 1, 2, and 3 were almost mind-blowing. Every time we play, like Josh and I go through DKC 1, we're always there like, wow, look at this amazing background. Like the tree levels in World 3 always get
It's
me.
especially great because you might just take a break from the game and play other stuff on the SNES Classic, and from there you get a better feel for how other games looked at the time. So you can directly compare it to other games in the SNES library, and then you boot that game up, and you're just like, yeah, goddamn, this must have been like a crazy thing for the time that it came out.
Yeah, definitely. I know, and it's just stuff things like that. Rare was so good at graphics. Even if you go back to their days in the 80s, and they were back when they were this company called Ultimate Play the Game. I remember that was their old company before they became Rare.
I never knew that.
Now I remember briefly from years ago I watched a video on it was a machinima video. It was like a history one of Rare, and yeah, they were a company that they were Ultimate Play the Game, and even on the NES, the graphics were incredible. They were sort of making 3D vectors in the 80s, which obviously you couldn't really like. You could tell they were 3D in the sense that they were three-dimensional shapes, but obviously in a 2D game. But even in the
Yeah,
mid 80s, you're like, bloody hell, that's that's impressive.
I never knew this.
No, I think there's a games like Attic Attack, Saber Wolf. There's a couple of games, Battletoads, of course,
Right.
2D
Okay,
game.
that one I knew. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll sort of send them to you afterwards, or I might put them in the description or something, or if I remember to, because I don't know.
if you're
If I remember to, I don't know. Depends how dedicated I am to sit through all this in editing.
Okay, I thought I was just making sure. A random game popped into my brain that I actually have the original NES cartridge for. It's a little game called Anticipation on the NES,
Yeah.
and that's a rare game. Even music composed by David Wise.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That was just a weird thing. I must have like booted it up recently and been like, the fuck, rare? Like I must have like saw their name on there. Yeah, that's. I mean that's a game where it's literally just like Pictionary or Draw My Thing. It's like that, but on the NES though. So nothing, no fancy graphics with that, but I guess it's still, yeah. I also don't have a very good frame of reference for how good NES games are meant to look. So I'm just saying that game exists. It's out there.
no, that's absolutely fine. At least that's a um good example, or like it could be a really good example. But I haven't seen it myself. But
Actually, come to think of it, like you move around on like this 3D-ish board, and it looks pretty 3D. There's even like a bit where it's like where it's like when you land like on like a wild card space, your piece like spins all around the board, and you gotta hit a button to stop it, and it moves like really fast but really smoothly. Also, I actually remember that was like weirdly smooth for the NES. Like, yeah, shit. Even on the little like board games, they knew how to make good graphics. So, yeah, I forgot about this game, but now that I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, it actually was for an NES game pretty good looking.
Yeah. But
Sorry. Anyways.
no, I know. No, sorry. That sounded really dismissive. I didn't mean to. I was like, yeah, I know. It's just that's rare. Oh, hello.
Hello. Who's here? Hey, it's Yoshi.
It's Sapphire. I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but this shows we're in a podcast chat in Discord which we made, and Sapphire has joined us. Sapphire, you've joined us half an hour into a DK64 discussion.
I was gonna say halfway. Let's see how long this goes on for. Yeah, we are mid podcast though, but welcome.
So I'm going to interrupt myself again because podcasts. I'm literally going to say that. That's going to be my thing every time I go off on a tangent or interrupt myself. Cause podcast. Because that's what podcasts do. You talk shit, but then you just go off on tangents and then you bring it back.
Yes.
So, for context, Sapphire is pretty much in the middle of Kyle and me, in the sense that I've played the game since I was 5 and I've completed it so many times. Kyle's only played it, well, not even completed it. I mean, Sapphire you said you haven't completed it, but Sapphire, you've played the game before Kyle has. You're sort of like in the middle.
Yeah, I've gotten like very close. Like I think when my family would play it, like we've gotten up like most of the collectibles, most of the bananas, all that, and then like.
And then you played Beaver Bother.
We just always struggled on the cable fight, always against that tiny portion.
I'm gonna get in before Kyle says anything. We've all struggled on that boss fight before.
I mean, I was gonna let it slide. I wasn't gonna say anything, but if you want to draw attention to that, then go for it. You did that to yourself.
I know, just banter. It's good bants.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, but actually, to be fair, Beaver Bother, the boss fight, and the bloody beetle race in Crystal Caves, and the rabbit race. There's a couple of things as well with other reasons. There are a couple of reasons to bloody dislike DK64, just from a completionist standpoint.
Funny thing is, I've heard endless horror stories about that beetle race, but like when I tried it, it wasn't like that bad. It might just be because it's gotten so much hype for being so bad that when I play it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. But like, I remember that one not being as bad. I actually really hated Beaver Bother the most because that just didn't fucking work.
Hang on, which beetle race are you talking about though?
That's a good point. I'm not sure how many I even did. I might have just been the first one.
I don't think you got to Crystal Caves, so I don't think you played the second one. And I'm talking about the second one. Like the first one sucks, but it's not too bad. The second one, there's one in Crystal Caves where you're lanky and you have to have his orang stand sprint, and you have to race the beetle, and that one's 10 times harder. Honestly, that one sucks.
I mean, I can give DK64 a little bit of respect in the sense that like it tries to be an exploration-based Donkey Kong game where no other DK game has really tried to be like that before.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, that's pretty much the point we were on. Although, yes.
What point were we on actually?
Yeah, so we're pretty much talking about DKC. So
no, yeah, we're talking about the history of Rareware and their graphics actually.
Yeah.
When you joined.
Well, at this point, we're talking about what made DKC great. So for me, it's about fourfold. I think, firstly, it was a fun, enjoyable, immersive experience. I think the levels were well thought out, unique, and I think they had a really good, manageable, understandable difficulty curve. And I think I'll sort of argue a bit. Obviously, DK64 is just trumps any sort of exploration that DKC has, just in terms of the fact it's bigger, wide, like larger, has a lot more scope to actually provide the opportunity to explore. However, I think DKC 1, 2, and 3 were so good at exploration as well, because the amount of secrets you had to find that were quite cryptic, that you had to go around and think of every possibility. I would argue in a sense that, especially in terms of 2D games, DKC 1, 2, and 3 were massive in terms of exploration, I think. But I totally get where you're coming from in the sense that you can't really compete with DK64 for all it has in the game.
Well, come to think of it, 3D games in general really can't like hide that many secrets outside of like. Actually, no. I guess there are ways, but like with like 2D games, I feel like it was much easier to just hide like invisible things here. Yeah, invisible things was actually one of the biggest ways to hide things, really. And 64 didn't really have that all that much, did it? So there's no like finding new secrets and new playthroughs. You kind of just finish it and you're done with it. Compared to how much shit there is to find in the Donkey Kong Country games.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And I guess it's just, again, just the difference in 2D and 3D, which I guess there's another thing as well. There's the DK64 was Rareware's transition to 3D in terms of Donkey Kong. But, yeah, so
Was this before or after the Banjo-Kazooie games, actually?
this was after Banjo-Kazooie, before Banjo-Tooie.
Okay.
So Banjo-Tooie was sort of bigger and better, but it wasn't bigger than DK64, which is probably they got it just right, you may argue. I don't know.
I do feel like that when the turnoffs for me for DK64 kind of along like what you feel about Banjo 2 is that it feels like it's being like the game drags on like tremendously, like even if you're not going for 100%, like there's so many levels, so many bananas you have to get. I just so many collectibles that you need to just be able to even get to the boss itself. Like it just takes a long time to actually get everything you need.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the other thing I'm going to say is that was actually DK64 is actually a very, very bad game to do a video series on, because I need to set up all my shit and then get ready to record and then be entertaining while I play the whole time. I think I might have liked the game a lot more if I just played it on my own time and just not worried about being funny and just playing the game, because it's a game where you gotta sink time into it. You have to.
Yeah.
And if you're in like a format where that's not very enjoyable to do, then it's not going to be as fun of a time.
No, I get that.
So I kind of have my own bias against the game, if anything.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't play it under the best circumstances.
Especially because like you guys were doing the race of it, weren't you?
No.
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 That was Mario Sunshine.
No, Carl was doing a blind Let's Player.
And DKC2. Those were our races, and also Mario Bros 3.
Yeah.
Those were all three of them. But yeah, I did like a blind playthrough while Dan helped me for half of them, and another friend of mine helped me the other half.
But yeah. But yeah, I want to finish the DKC bit because I do want to move on to it.
Right.
But that's the thing. Again, we can sort of discuss it with the podcast. But like I said, I think I'd say fourfold. I think it's 4 reasons that DKC was so enjoyable. The levels and the secrets, like I said. The graphics we've discussed. The third thing as well was just how enjoyable they were in terms of the adventures you could do either 1 player or 2 player. And I like the fact there was co-op and contest as well. And whilst I think obviously DKC didn't pioneer that because Nintendo and Sega had lots of multiplayer games, I just feel like DKC Trilogy possessed the ability to sort of have a multiplayer adventure in a way, in a sense that you could either do as a co-op mode where you help your friends out, or as a contest where you sort of compete with your friends. And it was like a slight adjustment that Rare. Because Rare always, I feel like, and again, it's a real shame of Rare or what they are now, but like the pre-Microsoft Rare were always trying to be a step ahead of others. They were like that subsidiary of Nintendo that were really trying to boost Nintendo up a level, up a gear, by boosting themselves up a gear. And it was sort of like they really benefited from each other, Rare and Nintendo.
Old Rare was great. Support Platonics.
Yes, definitely. And the final thing that makes fourfold is just the soundtrack of DKC. Really,
oh my God, yeah.
The soundtrack of all 3 games. David Wise did a phenomenal job composing a soundtrack that was just so fitting to the environments that were created, and there were tunes that encapsulated what the developers intended, like definitely. And I sort of don't like graphics and soundtrack are two things I mentioned, and it's like I don't want to get into this debate of oh graphics don't make a game because I totally agree with that. Graphics don't make a game, and I think graphics are probably amongst the least important things that determine whether a game is good or not. But I will also say they help. I'll sort of say help in quote marks, but if you see good graphics, they are memorable. Like just naturally, aesthetically memorable.
I think I've said this before, but I've always said the same thing. Good graphics and good music they don't
Help.
make they don't make a great game, but they can elevate a good game into a great game.
Yeah, because they seem to be the most memorable things. You know, if you're just walking around and you've got like a game in your head, you start singing a tune if it's a really good song.
Yeah.
So it's not like you just go, "Oh, I'm pretending to play a controller and pretending to play it for the plot." You wouldn't do that in the middle of like wherever. But so yeah, we got for the DKC part.
Yes, indeed.
So like that was what made DKC so interesting, and I feel like Nintendo wanted to move Donkey Kong onto the 3D in a new 3D system, didn't they? Nintendo 64. And
It was kind of inevitable. Games were just kind of go in there.
yeah, exactly. And they wanted to give DK a big 3D. There we go. I want to show off Donkey Kong in 3D. And like, I think Rare at this point they'd made Diddy Kong Racing, they'd made GoldenEye, and all those games are really good and successful. And I think Banjo-Kazooie was the benchmark, like I said, because Banjo-Kazooie came out, it was so like critical acclaim. It was so well received, so popular. It did so well. It was, and I think the reason it did so well was, again, it rivaled the Mario 64, but in many people's opinions, it surpassed Mario 64. But I think it pioneered the collectathon genre. I generally can't think of a popular collectathon before Banjo-Kazooie. Like, because Mario 64 wasn't a collectathon, it was an adventure game. I felt you collect stars, but it wasn't a collectathon in terms of you need to do this to you need to collect this amount of things to achieve this, collect those things to achieve that.
You know, it's a game. It's a game where you get dropped into a level and it says, "Here's your mission. Get this one thing."
Yeah,
Then you get the one thing, and then you leave. Banjo-Kazooie, it's like it drops you into a level. Hey, there's like 300 things to collect. Go for it, and then it just leaves you to it.
and
You also had to collect like a whole bunch of different stuff in order to unlock more things, which later became kind of a staple in collecting collectathon games. Like you gotta collect this much stuff to proceed in the game, but you can get, obviously more bonuses if you get everything. Yeah. I guess I can't think of any other games like that also before Banjo-Kazooie, really. You got a point there.
I know, yeah, and I think that's why Banjo was so well received because in a way, again, it was another unique take on the platformer adventure genre, if you will. Because like, oh, now you've got a platform, but you've got to collect a lot of stuff on the way, and if you don't collect enough things, then you might not be able to get through that portion of the game. Or oh, I need this many jiggies to get to next level. I need to get this many notes to get through this note door. Or when you get to the end, oh, I haven't collected all the honeycomb pieces, so I can't get the extra health for the boss battle. It just makes life easier. I feel like Rare, after Banjo-Kazooie, Rare was sort of trying to push everything to the extreme, and I think DK64 is possibly, I think Banjo was their peak, if you will. I think that's the peak of Rare, and afterwards is the most gradual decline, because DK64, Banjo-Tooie, and Conker were good games in their own ways, but they didn't reach the heights of Banjo-Kazooie. I think that's slowly when they started to decline. And yeah, DK64 had it was just so big, and I think they tried to include all that DKC had. Maybe I think it was a mixture of trying to include the DKC's charm, sass, humor, wit, so Donkey Kong's characters, but then they tried to also expand on Banjo-Kazooie, I think.
I would argue that's really more of just Rare's type of humor.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And because Donkey Kong didn't have that type of writing until the Donkey Kong Country games, which are also made by Rare.
Yeah, exactly. And
But yeah, still point taken though. Yeah.
and that's what I think it was. It's almost like I sort of see DK64 as almost like the black sheep of the Donkey Kong series. Like again, I'm sort of not including the Donkey Kong Arcade here. I mean, yes, that's part of the series. DK Arcade's in a way a bit of a black sheep, but a lot of those games in the 80s and arcade games, there was only so much you could do with them. But like Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Land were very similar games. You look at the DKs that are now on the Wii, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, DKCR. They take a similar format to Donkey Kong Countries. DK64 just went off on its own adventure, if you will, and it just became this giant, colossal game that is, like you said, it's memorable. It was enjoyable, but by God, it was flawed.
Yeah. That pretty much sums it up. Yeah. So. Okay, those are your thesis statements, but I'm not sure where do we go from here? What do we talk about? What was flawed? What was great?
Yeah, I think we'll yeah.
I don't have too much to add to that. Like pretty much like for me, my biggest thing was like yeah, again like it was just damned impressive for the time that it came out, but just the sheer scope of the game was kind of annoying to get through everything. The fact that you had to keep on swapping Kongs every couple of seconds, and the act of doing that had you walk across the map again. Some of the mini games were actually pretty par for the course at the time. When you kind of think about it, all mini games at the time were kind of bullshit. But like, yeah, lots of trial and error stuff where you just gotta keep on redoing it with no proper retry button to make it go faster.
It's beaver
It was-
bother.
That is, I think, the worst one.
The
Just because of the fact that like you need to just know exactly where the spot is, or else the game just doesn't function.
I know, like the controls don't make sense half the time. Well, more than half the time. It's just, oh my God, I can't.
But don't forget about that one where you spin the turtles, and there's one particular one where the game's lag and the frame drops are required for you to be able to react fast enough.
Oh, on the Virtual Console version, you've actually got a pause buff for the Crazy Kong one, where you shoot a melon at the banana
Yeah,
that
was
appears,
it.
and yeah, I know. On the Virtual Console version on the Wii U, you actually have to pause buffer it because of the lag on the N64.
But the thing is though is that those mini games near the end were so difficult that it's not humanly possible to do it unless like those couple frames of lag is makes a difference on whether you win it or lose it, because it was that unforgiving near the end.
I know. But I guess that also goes round to so I guess we can touch back on that expansion pack thing,
Ah, yes.
because there's no way in hell Nintendo wanted that expansion pack, because that cost a lot of money to make those and put them in the game's the package of the game. And like I've seen I think Nintendo said that it cost too much money to do that, and they weren't happy with Rare for the fact the game required it, because like I think the 64 could do like 4 gigs or something of hardware, and DK64 was pushing 8, which is what the expansion pack I think could handle.
So the expansion pack was really meant to be just something for making games run better, but instead suddenly where it's like, hey, this game requires it, and Nintendo's like, what the fuck, what? Is that like what happened basically?
I think so. I remember watching a video not too long ago, and it said something like, I think Rare were, I don't want to misquote this. I think it was, I don't know if they were planning to use it, but apparently there was so much code in the game that it wouldn't. They were testing it and it would not run. They had to have the expansion pack in, and I know for a fact Nintendo were not happy, because it wasn't a good business thing to do. Because then instead of actually selling it separately, you're selling it with the cartridge, and it's like, oh, you need this to play on it or to play the game. Like you said, it was meant to be a device to hone edges pretty much and sort of thing, and just go, oh yes, this is the game in. It can run smoother. You can do a couple of little things. It basically was a device initially created to allow games to run a bit smoother and to add a little bit of extra content or allow you to, just access a couple of things or make rings run smoother. I think there's only 3 games that actually require it. DK64 is one of them. Majora's Mask needed it, I think, and another rare game, Perfect Dark, which I haven't talked about. Perfect Dark didn't need it. I just don't think you'd. I just like apparently the game without the expansion pack was very bare and minimal.
Funny, I actually don't know a whole lot about that game, even though some people even say that it was better than GoldenEye. But GoldenEye
Yeah.
was the really big revolutionary one, so that's what everyone talks about. It's kind of funny though that Nintendo was. I mean, I kind of get it, but like yet still like at some point they decide, hey, the Wii's got this freaking Wii Motion Plus now, and we're gonna package it in with Zelda Skyward Sword, and then it's like, hey, now we have a 3DS XL, and it's a stronger version of the game, and now we have certain games that can only be played in the 3DS XL. It's like funny how like they were against it at the time, but yet they keep on doing it to themselves.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. It's hard to know. I think once they'd done DK64, they were almost like, we might as well utilize this now.
Well, I mean,
Possibly.
also, in Rare's defense, Nintendo's still sticking with cartridges at the time was really, really stupid. That was like their biggest mistake of that entire console generation. Was
Yeah,
not going to discs like everyone else was.
I know.
Anyways, though, but yeah, I guess though, yeah, the fact that the game required the expansion pack means that Rareware must have clearly gotten way too ambitious with this game because it's like, hey, we made this game like for this console as per our contract with Nintendo, and it can't run it. Oops.
It was like just that bigger, better, larger thing, and it's like, so I'm sort of going to the part where I'm going to sort of wrap this up now and get to a conclusion of this, because we're going to sort of talk about our opinions at the end. But it's like DK64, bigger, larger, better. If you again, the problem is though, the game is broken in all. If you look at speedruns of the game, you look at the amount of glitches that can occur playing the game. I think they literally try to cram too much into it to a point where walls don't really exist half the time, where you can glitch through doors in terms of like trying to enter a level. You can actually glitch past the blocker and just get in like that.
Well, you can also skip to the end of Ocarina of Time by freaking catching a bug in a bottle in the right way, and then somehow that determines what room you enter when you exit a certain room.
Yeah, and I'm not
Like especially back then, no game ever released perfect.
no, of course not, because like Mario 64, you can complete in about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm not saying that's the case at all, but it's just DK 64 is so easy to manipulate. I feel like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, bit trickier to get your way around. Obviously, games like that they always have the bugs to abuse, but DK64 it's practically all you have to do is just walk into a part of a wall that's not visible, or just literally zoom in and zoom out, and oh look, I've swum through a wall. It's just little things like that. Walls practically don't exist in the game. Like a game that big shouldn't be completed in 20 minutes. In theory, I think that the world record for any percent is about 23, 24 minutes, and that's the thing in the end. I just feel, yeah, there's a lot of bugs in it, and there's probably again, it indicates how much they try to cram into the game ultimately.
Yeah, I suppose.
So let's. So now I'm going to sort of round it up. So DK64. What are our thoughts of the game, gentlemen? Start with you, Sapphire, as our half-time guessed.
I mean, it was enjoyable to an extent, but after a while, like it just feels like it really just drags on and just like you almost gotta wonder when is it gonna be done? Like when is it gonna reach its climax? Or just like there's just some levels that just weren't enjoyable. Uh, even though I like the music, Gloomy Galleon has like is drags on for a while. There's quite a bit of problems with the castle level. But just I don't know. I just af- after a while, I just didn't enjoy it too much anymore. But I feel like if it was like a shorter game in general, like I might enjoy it better. But uh, also, I especially hate the freaking kinky wolf fight.
Hmm.
It's like no matter how many times I try, like I could just the freaking tiny portion of the fight was just too difficult.
Yeah, tiny part's obnoxious. I find Diddy's part really obnoxious as well, because like the hit detection on those targets really is really stupid
Hmm.
and
Right. Well,
inconsistent.
as for me, I don't have much of an opinion on that game really because I played it halfway through one time 2 years ago. Um, and I don't really remember being all that frustrated by the tedium of it. Or I think the one reason why I did find it frustrating was again because I was recording a video for it, so it's like okay, there's just a lot of dead time where I'm sitting here with all my equipment and nothing to say. It was just kind of the wrong game to do that for. But aside from that, I think really I think the only problem was that just everything was kind of way too tedious and everything took too long. Like oh, here's some bananas. I gotta walk over here, switch to this Kong, then walk all the way back here. I also got lost in the levels quite a lot, but that might have just been me because I'm bad at navigating things. But that happened a lot though. Um, yeah. I'm not sure how to feel about that game because I didn't really play it all that much. But I remember thinking like, okay, there's all these things that they definitely could have done to improve it. This is a bit much. Especially I think the fact that just all the bananas, 100 bananas for each Kong in each level. That was I think the breaking point. Okay, I thought that was too far. And the mini games also could have been less obnoxious. Yeah, the game had its flaws, but I didn't really hate it. I didn't really wasn't really sick of playing it all that much. I didn't dislike playing it, but it could have been better. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of recurring theme is that it's not a bad game, and what they were trying to accomplish, you could argue they did accomplish in a sense that it was a big. I still think it holds a world record for like the most collectibles in a game because there is so much to collect. So you could argue they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, but I don't know if the game stood the test of time. It's like you said, it seems to be more revered, or like it doesn't it yeah it's got much more criticism as the game's aged, um, and I probably in terms like I guess thanks to how the world is now. You didn't have YouTube, didn't have much back then. You had like say Nintendo Power, maybe a game FAQs, the odd forum site. Whereas you got a lot more media now and a lot more places to voice an opinion, and DK64 definitely hasn't come off as well as other games in terms of popular opinion. My opinion, and I'm trying to be as, and I think I have been quite open-minded and not nostalgic this episode, this podcast.
Yeah, Ben. Yeah.
I would say that I do enjoy the game. I will always have that want to play it again because of the nostalgia I've got for it. I enjoy the missions. I've always sort of enjoyed games where you've got to search places and collect things. I guess I'm just a collectathon gamer. But what I'll say is there are certain instances. So I'll go back like what Sapphire said. Like Gloomy Galleon is an obnoxious level. There are certain golden bananas in this game which take half an hour if you suck like I do at it. You know, like there's the fish in Gloomy Galleon, which I forgot to mention earlier. That bloody one sucks. The big fish with the spinning fan. The beaver bottom.
Oh, I remember that shit. Yeah.
Because like the hitbox just doesn't make sense half the time. The beaver bother mini games. The fact again, some of the ones I mentioned earlier. But then I also then couple that creepy castle. There were so many bananas in that level, which are so easy. I almost felt like they were. I feel like they'd almost reached the limit of the expansion pack at that point, because I feel like there are so many bananas in Creepy Castle, and they're like, "What? Is that all you have to do? Like that's not even hard." Like,
Yeah.
like not that I'm complaining, but I feel like, and that goes back to DKC with the difficulty curve. I just feel as though it wasn't existent in this game. It was like there were 20 easy golden bananas in a level, which fair enough. Again, that's where therein lies the problem. There's a lot of shit to try and wade through. But like, oh, there's 20, 22, 23 easy golden bananas in this level, and oh look, there's 2 absolute what the hell? Why am I hate my life golden bananas? That sort of thing. And I just feel as though they didn't get the balance right in difficulty. Possibly. I just feel like I think the hardest boss, K. Rool aside, is in Frantic Factory, and that's the 3rd level. So even then, you're sort of thinking, have they quite got the difficulties right? I'd probably say the 3rd and the 4th boss are the 2 hardest in the game, other than K. Rool.
I actually remember. Wait, the third boss was the freaking Jack in the Box, right?
Yeah, Jack in the Box.
And the 4th was that giant pufferfish sea urchin
Yes.
thing. I actually remember the sea urchin being like one of the most satisfying bosses I ever pulled off, because like I just did it and I'm like, oh, that was close though, but it was really for me that one was just right. But the Jack in the Box was frustrating as hell. Yes.
I know, and I feel like that was a bit odd.
Just
Um,
freaking 20 minutes of hup wee hup wee.
Yeah,
I always remember hating the Jack in the Box.
yeah, it could be Lanky. He's on his orangutan sprint doing the bloody beetle race and the rabbit race.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like difficulty but I think I do find it enjoyable. Probably too long, but again, I think that's what they were going for, and they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. But I feel like the more analytical we are, and the more we can sort of delve deep into games and what makes them the games they are. You could probably argue that it was a good idea in principle, but it definitely wasn't executed as well as they wanted it to.
It's like it's like the 90s equivalent of like that sandbox, or that 3D RPG game where it's like, oh, look at this, the game is so big it takes you like 30 hours to walk across the map, and people say, oh, but is the whole thing fun though? And they're just like, oh, well, but
You
look
wanted
how big it
bigger.
is.
You wanted bigger. Yeah. And like, if I was to give it a rating out of 10, I would.
Should I thought about this before?
6. I'd give it a
Ooh,
6.
really?
I'm possibly being generous. I'd give it a 6.
You should clarify. Is 6 just like, just like barely above average for you? Because like I think if you're like an actual like professional game critic, a 6 is like a 3 in the world of gaming now.
hmm if I'm going out of 10, I'd say a 6, and I'd say that it's slightly above average in terms of I think it is a game that it's got replayability. But what I found as a kid was I had replayability up to about Frantic Factory, and then I'd stop and then I restart it until I wanted to complete it. So I don't know. I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
I did
It's
enjoy Frantic Factory quite a bit.
yeah, that's my favorite level, Frantic Factory. But I mean, was I'd complete Frantic Factory. I guess Gloomy Galleon is where you're like, okay, that's it. Screw this. Water level too big. I'm starting over. But yeah, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Personally, good game. Very flawed. It has its enjoyable moments. It has some enjoyable missions to do, but It is very long. The need to switch out, like there are certain missions where, you know, you have to do something with Diddy and activate something for Donkey or whatever. And I can sort of get on board with that because each Kong has their own strength, has their own move, has their own specialties. But yeah, like the part where it's like, oh, I've got to open a switch with Diddy to access something for Lanky, and that's where I'm thinking that's a bit tedious. I don't mind doing something which is just a move, but like if you have to open something and then go all the way to tag barrel and then come back and do something in there as another Kong, that's a bit, yeah. I don't know. They probably overkilled that mechanic.
I think I have something else I just thought of. This might like freaking extend this whole entire discussion by another like goddamn half hour though if we go deep into this. But my very first collectathon game was Spyro the Dragon, and for me that was like almost like my standard because I think a lot of people underappreciate just how useful Spyro's charge move is. How the fact that it's a big game that you can maneuver through it quickly.
Yes.
N64 was also a very slow-moving game. The Kongs moved pretty slowly, and you just keep on spamming the long jump if you wanted to move faster. If that even worked, I'm not even sure if that did work. If that made you go faster, but there's just a lot of walking, a lot of like just giant empty rooms with like the stuff on the edges of the rooms. It's a game where it's like very big, but it's all spread very thinly. Also, I just kind of had that thought now.
Yeah. I know that's something as well I've already mentioned. Yeah, it is quite a slow paced game. Unless apart from your Rangstand sprint, which you unlock in Crystal Caves with just 2 levels left. Or 3 if you include Hideout Helm. But like 2 big main levels left. So yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah, that's a big thing though, is that just the entire game is pretty kind of slow moving. In addition to being way too big.
So yeah, I think that probably draws this to a close. I'm pleased we were able to get an hour of DK64 because it's a game that I do have it does hold a place in my heart in terms of nostalgia. I do know that I get why people dislike it or it's not remembered fondly. I still consider it a black sheep in the DK series because it's
And
not.
game. I bet you wish that the game didn't have autosave.
I wish the game had bloody autosave. We both Kyle and I wish had autosave.
I don't
So
know,
I
man.
wish it didn't have autosave. I meant.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I
The
was
fact the game didn't have autosave kind of saved me from having to finish it.
Or even a bloody copy feature. Why doesn't it have a copy file?
Right, sorry, Yoshi, what were you saying?
Because yeah, so hey, the autosave kind of screwed Dan over, especially when it came to his YouTube project of it.
I remember I had to replay it. I had to replay it 3 times, like twice. I had to replay it twice to get back up to where I was at because of recording failures.
It's like all the previous games in the series had manual save some points like in the game, so not sure why this game couldn't have had it too.
Maybe it would have taken too much room on the expansion pack. But
Even with the expansion back, the game would be too big for that.
yeah, it's like no, we can't have a copy file feature. What? 4 extra words that you can't fit that in there.
No, the game doesn't run now.
Exactly. Oh, would you look at that? The game now can't run on anything. You need Donkey Kong 64 on the Dreamcast instead. It's like something with a disc. There we go.
Right.
Oh man. But yeah, I'm pleased that we got a podcast out of this game. I wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, it was fun. And yeah, it turns out we all had a lot to say, didn't we?
Which is why, yeah, like I said, it's a black sheep of the Donkey Kong series. It's so different from what Donkey Kong games are accustomed to, and it's so different from the really popular DK games, which is the 3 on the Super Nintendo. But
At this point, I kind of argue like which one's more of a black sheep, the DK64 or DKC Returns, because like especially with like the lack of King Roll and the Gremlins, like it just really didn't feel like the same Donkey Kong feel to it.
That was just licensing problems, though.
Yeah, I think that might be a discussion for another podcast. I think the format, in terms of format, it's similar. I do, yeah. The characters were a bit of a like, whoa, what the hell? But yeah, I think in terms of form, I think D64 is just a completely different DK game.
No, it absolutely was, yeah.
But
But again, that's because that's what Rareware did was at the time, like they either hell they also made like a freaking kart racer out of Diddy Kong. Like they haven't made a whole lot of original IPs, have they? They just kind of I mean they made some, but not a whole lot. They just kind of take this IP and make a game that no one had seen for it before. That's nothing new, really, actually.
yeah, well, Banjo, thankfully, well, Banjo was their IP. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like Kong's were sort of their main IP that they wanted, but that was Nintendo's own character.
Right.
Even though like did it like Rare just like took the idea of like a kart racer, they definitely took it to a new level when it comes to how they did it, like with the adventure mode, the bosses, like all the all the exploration that you have to do, the different styles of racing. Like they definitely used a lot of creativity when making it.
Yeah,
That is true, yeah.
that
I
is
see that in a racing game before, really.
no, that is true. And actually, that's something I do want to discuss in the podcast one day: is DKR versus Mario Kart. But
Yeah, all right.
that will be for another time. Anyway, I think we signed up about 5 times, but I
I
will.
was gonna say,
I think we'll definitely sign off now. So yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Semi-regular, so like we're not really gonna have a schedule, but we will do this somewhat regularly to the point where this series actually you will see podcasts at not at sporadic times or like once every year. I do want to make these at a decent and produce these at a decent pace. So yeah, stay tuned for more of these. Thank you to Random Game Critic who will be doing them with me, and I'm sure we'll have some topics of his as well that we'll discuss for sure.
yeah, probably at some points. I'll come up with something.
And thank you to Sapphire who joined halfway for the halftime guest.
I was trying to avoid being spotted.
In a podcast, that's really hard unless you just don't speak.
Well, no, as soon as you enter the call, we freaking heard the noise.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. And yeah, so guys, you also get used to that as well. We've got this little podcast channel on server on Discord, so people might join halfway through. It just is what it is because we've sort of trying to do these at times which are convenient, and it's not always convenient because time zones / responsibilities.
Yep.
So that's it from us. We'll see you guys next time. Adios.
Bye, everyone.